Hello, welcome to another edition of Success in Art. I'm your host today, Debbie Roy, and my guest is an artist and writer, poet, Brenda Girolamo. Welcome, Brenda. How are you today?
I'm well, thank you so much.
So we're going to talk a little bit about your journey as an artist and what that path has taken you and where you're going with it. So let's just start, let's go way back. When did you know you wanted to be an artist, or how did you get into art to begin with?
Well, I've always been somewhat artistic. My sisters and I were always somewhat artistic, but I can't say as though I had this idea that I had to be an artist. It wasn't until probably my senior year in high school that a representative from a local design school came in and was presenting to the senior class, and that's when I knew, when I saw an illustration that was just really beautiful, that I said, I want to learn how to do that, to take the ideas in my head and put them down on paper. So it wasn't until my senior year that I kind of knew it was a path that I wanted to go down.
Yeah, so it was like a counselor that came in and talked about some career choices? Or?
It was actually a representative from the school. It was called the School of Advertising Art, and it was in Kettering, Ohio. And he was promoting his school. It was only 3 years old at the time. It was a 2-year program, and it gave kids an alternative rather than the 4-year school. And so I was probably maybe the 3rd or 4th graduating class from that.
So it was an associate's program in design. So it was like a poster and illustration that he showed you at that?
Yeah, they did have some ads. Since it was advertising art, it was learning how to take ideas and create a design or sell products. But it was also, we had figure drawing classes, we had illustration classes.
Oh, good.
But it wasn't specifically for learning illustration. So I had more of the design and production side of art. That was way before computers.
Yeah, no, I started with Photoshop 0, and that seems like that's the path that they kind of directed you in those days. It's like, you want to be an artist, take commercial art. Yes. I have a degree in fine art and commercial art, but it seems like at the time they wanted you to do commercial art to make a living, and they kind of sway people away from fine art. Is that what happened to you?
In a way, since I had not kind of been in art all along, and I just wasn't going to go to the 4-year college. This was a little bit closer to home. I could commute. It was a 2-year program, and it was Monday through Friday, 9 to 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock. So it was just concentrated classes, like a trade school. So that was kind of more what I wanted to do, and but it was more the advertising. Some of the assignments were illustrations, but it didn't focus as much on it as I had hoped.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and that's what people don't realize is there is a big difference between design and art. People think, oh, it's the same thing, but design is a lot more left brain lateral thinking. You have to solve problems and do a lot of coding, and artwork, it's very right brain, creative, spontaneous. There's a little crossover, but it's not the same, and it's interesting that you went along that journey too.
Yeah, and like I said, I didn't have something set that I wanted to be. Growing up in my household, my parents always said you could be anything you wanted to be. So I didn't have anything, like I have to be this or I have to be that. But I loved the colors, I love the art, I love poetry, I love playing with the difference of words. And so yeah, I went into the 2-year school, and from there went on to textbook publishing and advertising, and so various jobs.
Yep, some more design and layout, some graphic design, website design maybe?
A little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit of that.
Okay. And so you were in that field for how long were you?
Probably about 18 years, and I had traveled around a little bit. I've had a very kind of unconventional path. With the graphic design, I could travel and get jobs in different places. So when I graduated from art school, I had worked at a textbook publisher for about 3 years, and they went through a series of layoffs. But then they would hire us back as contractors for the summer. And in, I believe it was 1992, my sister, who was in the Air Force, she was stationed out at Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana. She was getting married, so the whole family caravanned out there for the wedding, but I stayed. So then I stayed in Montana and worked at a advanced printing company. I was in the production or design department, and then got a job at an advertising agency out there. So I was there for about 3 years. And then I had met Paul, who became my husband. We were getting married. He was also in the Air Force. So we ended up going to England for 3 years and then came back to California and then chose the East Coast to come and live. That's where he's from. So I've been able to take my profession with me, but when we came back to New England, I kind of felt, I didn't know if I wanted to continue on that path. I had some great jobs in graphic design, but I felt like I needed something different. And that's when I then decided to go to a 2-year program for muscular therapy.
And I think, well, I think that happens a lot. You kind of get forced into, you need to do design work, you need to do that, and you do it for 5, 10, 15 years, and like me, you kind of get burnt out. You want something more, so you're looking for something more. Sometimes you're completely going way out of the field, like I learned Tai Chi, I think you did too.
Yes, I did.
But it's just interesting, that path. What advice would you give students looking for art? They want to be an artist. They're looking at colleges now. What advice would you give them about looking at a design school, art school? You know, if you could go back and talk to yourself when you were going in, what would you tell them?
Well, I would like somebody to have had a conversation with me to narrow down what it was about art that I liked, if I could have vocalized that. Was it the illustration, or was it more, as you said, the design element? I didn't know to ask those questions, so to have somebody sit down and actually kind of talk to you a little bit about, to explore, you know, is it something that you want to do gallery work? Is it something where you want to do advertising or pop art? To have a little bit more, search a little bit more and get more of the specifics of what it is.
So a little bit more about the careers in the art field. And the thing about the art field is that most of the jobs in the art field are independent contractors. There aren't a lot of 9-to-5 jobs in art. So, and I think that's another thing they don't always tell you, that you have to be very self-motivated in this field.
Right, and also there was a difference here, even moving back to New England, between New Hampshire and Massachusetts. We had lived in Medford for a while. I worked in Boston. I worked for a placement agency, so I would go on contract to a place, and that would come to a close, and then, you know, I was able to find a contract after contract after contract, which was great.
But that's a different lifestyle to get it used to. It's not the 9-to-5 career that people are used to. But you can survive. You can definitely
Yes.
you can flower, you can flourish, but you have to be aware that what you're getting into. And I think that's kind of what you're trying to say.
And the different lifestyles, so the different art you want to do. Do you want to do animation? Do you want to do print? Do you want to do, you know, what is it? So there's so many choices now. So it's a matter of maybe having somebody help you to explore what is it you like about it, hear all the different options, because they might find out things that they can do that they didn't know. I could even find out things that I didn't know that I could do.
Either go to a college that has a lot of options you can explore, or talk to a career coach, maybe go on some job shadows to get a better idea what these fields entail, and then find your best fit.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you kind of ended up where I did. You did design for 15, 20 years, and you're unfulfilled, and then what happened?
Well, I had gone to school. I'd been going to school for muscular therapy, and I have to say my last job that I had in graphic design was a really kicker job. It was with Atari, so we were doing the package designs, and so that was in Beverly, Massachusetts, and then they closed their doors. They laid everybody off. So it was one of those things where along the way I kept getting the nudge to go do something else. And I didn't even really go to school for muscular therapy because I wanted to be a therapist. I went because I felt like it was authentic to what I needed in my life for balance. And I love to learn about the human body and the anatomy, the physiology. So I did 2 years of that school. It was one evening a week and all day Saturday. When we moved up to New Hampshire, the last place I was working was I could work from home. It was for a textbook publisher in Boston. And then they stopped outsourcing. So that's when I knew at that moment, okay, so now let's pursue maybe something in, you know, muscular therapy. So my art sort of took on a different role. I've always been doing it. I've designed my own business cards, my own website. So I kind of do a little bit of everything. So I'm my own bottleneck too. So I don't have a web designer or a graphic designer to do. So
I think many of us, we kind of dabble a little bit of everything, but that's what makes us artists, I guess.
So when I'm working on something, sometimes the therapist is like, is my business card done? And the designer's like, not quite, I'm still working on it. So, so it's just kind of interesting to have all those facets that I can take care of. So I still do a lot of art. I'll still take on some jobs, whether it's, you know, logo designs or business cards for people or promotions, marketing. I don't necessarily seek it out, but I still do a lot of art. So So I was doing the massage therapy. I was in with a chiropractor in Salem, working for myself but renting space. Been doing that for 8 years, but probably I'd say in 2008 is when I started to kind of want to develop more of my writing skills, and that's when I started a personal challenge, which then led to the publishing of my book. So I didn't set out to do a book. Again, it just kind of, my path took me there. So
I think that's interesting. I think a lot of writers start with a blog, say, oh, I'll do a post a day or a post a week, and I'll challenge myself to do that. And I think a lot of books come from that compilation of work. Is that something similar that happened with you?
Exactly, because I think sometimes thinking of writing a book is too big and too overwhelming. So, you know, let's not go there. Let me just write one thing per day for a year. And I had friends, family, colleagues. There was probably about 50 people that said, yeah, I'll be willing to read what you write and receive that extra email a day. And so I had no idea what I was going to write. This was really, you know, after years of reading books, and it really kind of mostly centered around spirituality or self-healing or self-care. So I'd read a lot of books through the years, and I thought, maybe I have something to say about it too. So that's when I started writing one thing per day as an inspiration, just to see what was inside.
Well, that's also, it sounds like you're kind of on a journey and kind of exploring. That's another great outlet for writing, is to find out where you are, where you're going. It sounds like maybe that's what you were also working on at the same time.
Yeah, because I had no idea what I was going to write about either, which was a little scary because I promised everybody I'd write something every day. So I didn't pre-write it the night before or rewrite things. I just sat in the morning and I was like, okay, this is my time to write. What am I going to write? And then I would just let the inspiration come, and I would try to put it into words as best as I could. And sometimes I was really surprised about what I wrote and would read it later in the day and interpret it totally different than the experience I had in the morning. So it was exciting and at the same time scary.
But it sounds like you had a great tactic, because I mean, I think a lot of people, I'm going to write, I'm going to lose weight, I'm going to do this, and you do it for a couple of days or a couple of weeks and then you stop. But the way that you did it, and you kind of brought your family and friends in, you motivated yourself, so then you had accountability.
Exactly.
You had to do it. I think that's a great way. I think that's a great way to approach it.
Yeah, and it was very scary because as soon as you say you're going to do something, I mean, I have a lot of ideas. I start a lot of things. I don't necessarily finish them.
I do too.
So it was really important for me to follow through with that. And if that was the only thing I did that day, I felt really successful, and it was already done in the morning for the most part. So as the journey went on, I had several series. I knew from the beginning, from my textbook publishing background, that I wanted to name it and I wanted to organize it with a format. So right from the very beginning, I think subliminally, I kind of was prepping myself for you know, organization later on. So there were several series that came out of it, and I ended up having over 500 writings because it went longer than a year.
Wow.
So after the first year, I just kept writing, and it just was like, this is really cool. But then after a while, I was like, when does this end? How does this end? How do I stop it? But people were saying, these are really inspiring. I look forward to this every day. You have no idea. I wake up, I get my coffee, and I'm like, what did Brenda write? And I was really touched by that. I was like, wow. And when people were saying, are you going to put this in a book? At first I was like, me? No, well, maybe. And then the whole process of how do you choose publishing? Do you try to get published? Do you do it yourself? You know, and I eventually went with Balboa Press, which is a subsidiary of Hay House, which is a much bigger publishing company, which produced all the books that I had been reading for 20 years. So I felt,
yeah, they're big in spiritual books. From Louise Hay, that wrote the
Yes.
The Healer Within. I think no, not the Healer Within. Yeah,
Heal Your Body.
Heal Your Body.
Heal Your Life.
And
yeah.
you know, I'm familiar too. They have a lot of spiritual growth sort of books. So that sounds like a good thing. But it's a subsidiary. But it's also what you did self-publishing, correct?
Yes. So Balboa is a subsidiary of Hay House, and there are a lot of publishers to choose out there. A lot of packages. I mean, they're all over the place. So again, when I get presented with so many options and possibilities, like, how do you decide what you're going to do? So I chose this because of its connection with Hay House and the reputation that Louise Hay has. And so I chose the basic package. I think it was called Embark, and it was in 2012, I believe it was. It took me 3 years to complete it. It was an amazing process. I started the package and submitted my manuscript, and then they gave me the proof back. but I didn't have an editor for the most part or anybody else reading it. So.
And that's the thing about self-publishing. You do everything yourself. You do the artwork for the cover. You have to go through and find the typos and have your friends look through it and everyone look through it. And it's a lot of work. And to do the layout, I mean, it's really great to have your book, but you have to be aware that when you're self-publishing, a lot more goes into it than just submitting your manuscript.
Correct. And you can hire those other services. I did have an editor go over my initial manuscript just so that I could have another set of eyes, and she made all of her comments, and then I went through it and I made some edits, some changes. It was really nice to have somebody. You know, there's an idea that, you know, I want to self-publish, I want to do this. But then when you start the process and you think about possibly anybody anywhere reading your book, you're like, ooh, I want to think about how this is going to get out there and what I'm saying. And so I got a little overwhelmed with the process, and it took me a lot longer. But the representative there, her name is Stacy Kern, she just would call me and just do her peppy check-ins. She's like, I'm not pressuring you, you're good, it's all I just want to let you know, just checking in. So there were times when I pulled back and stopped the process a little and lost my momentum, but she would always call and I'd be like, okay, again, accountability.
So you pick a package, and I'm guessing you pay them some money up front.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a time limit, of when you have to do that by, or how does that
Well,
work?
some companies may have that. At the time, Balboa didn't have it. They said, this is your pace, this is, you know, I took 2.5, almost 3 years.
Yeah.
And I just had to finish it because it was time for me to finish it, but I don't know how long they would have let it go. So yeah, no, it's really all your own regulation, self-regulation on that. So,
again,
I wasn't the longest.
Unless your family, unless your friends have everyone read it and reread it. And so your book is called Psalms of the Dragonfly Turtle, and this is your artwork on the cover.
It is.
So can you tell me a little bit about the book and what's in it? So you have your inspiration that you wrote in your journals, but what are they about?
Well, mainly it's about sort of sorting myself out and finding out what I think about life, and you know, being raised with a particular religion or set of beliefs or values. You know, as you start living your life, you get other experiences, and sometimes it's hard to allow yourself to explore other perceptions of things. And this was really my exploration. I think I call it a slow journey of a baptism of discovery for me into what I think about life and what inspires me most. And so it was really kind of drawing from my own authentic experience versus just taking what had been handed to me, which can be very scary when you pull away from your traditional beliefs or you explore other things from those beliefs, because you sometimes have a sense of loyalty to what you were brought up with.
Yeah.
So exploring something different was a little scary, but it was really an amazing process.
Yeah, and it's also very raw and it's personal because you're digging down deep. So how do you handle, I'm sure once you get this out there and you've gotten amazing feedback from your family, but when you get it out to other people, how do you handle the feedback? What's that been like?
Well, the cool thing about that was when I was writing the front matter of this, I switched it probably 5 or 10 times, depending on where I was. And in there I write that I realized that these inspirations were not mine to hold, they were mine to share. So I'm going to just put it out there, and some people may be drawn to it, some people maybe not, but it's okay. And just as I would like to be able to discern for myself what is in line with me. So if somebody doesn't agree with it or somebody doesn't like it, I'm like, I accept that, because I'll find the people who naturally connect with it.
Yeah. That's the way spirit works.
But that was a fear throughout the whole process, because I really felt I had to defend everything I wrote. And then finally, when I decided on this last round of front matter of how I wanted to frame the book, I said, no, this is it. This is just putting it out there. This was my experience. So they're like postcards, I say, of a journey, just as if you went on a vacation or a journey and you have snapshots. You may still be in the same place, or you may have changed from there. So I gave myself the freedom to grow from even my own writing, and agree with it or not, or be drawn to it or not. So I give other people the same freedom to
experience the way that according to what their journey is and where they are in life. So I imagine it's kind of like an artwork. You want to hold on to it. Like when you're drawing a piece of art, it's tweaking, but it comes to a point you have to let go. You have to be done. You have to put it out to the world. And I'm sure the response has been great. But that now you're still learning because you've got your book. It's a beautiful book. You've got
Thank
it
you.
published. You have an ISB number, but your work's not done, right?
No.
So then, what happens when you actually get your physical book in your hand?
So, of course, the publisher is there to help you, and they say, well, what do you have for promoting it? And, you know, there's packages and packages you can buy, but I kind of really wanted to savor my accomplishment. And I think another side of the story is that there's not always just one path for something to take. You know, one of the, my editor had asked me, you know, do you want to be known as you know, a serious poet? Or is this just for friends and family? So the other side of it is just because you publish a book doesn't mean you have to fast track it to bestseller.
No.
Because you could buy packages, but you got to also be prepared to live that life and go do all those things that it takes to get there. And I'm sort of taking a more organic path with just enjoying who I'm connecting with along the way. And I'm always carrying like 5 books with me wherever I go in my bag, like a business card. And I'm just enjoying the authentic connections I make with people rather than I'm going to buy that package and make it a bestseller.
No, and you're also staying local. I understand you just went to a book signing last night. So how did that go?
Oh yeah, it was Saturday afternoon. It was over at Coffee Berries in Londonderry, and it was from 2 to 3:30, and there was probably about 15 people or so that showed up specifically for the event. There are other people coming in to get coffee or tea, and I sold about 7 books, which was really nice. So I had my husband come along because I didn't know what to expect, and I'm like, what if nobody shows?
So this is your very first book signing?
This was, yes.
Wow, I'm glad it was a success. It sounds
So it was really nice, and I really appreciated those who showed up and supported me, and to get their feedback. Again, I had wondered, you know, how am I going to talk about my book? What am I going to say? But then it just, when you start to connect with people who are genuinely, the conversation just goes on its own.
Yeah, so promoting it, it's like networking like you would for your normal business. So you have to join networking groups like maybe Rotaries or something. You have to put yourself out there. So think of a movie release. They release the movie, but then you see all the actors going around and doing their circuit and
Right.
putting it in your own pace. But you have to kind of do that to promote your materials too.
Yes.
You know, they have to be found or promoted some way.
And that's the other thing that I've learned from this is I've never been a natural self-promoter. And I was like, I'm not good at selling. But the other interesting thing that happens when you finish a project like this is it grows you. So like now, whereas before I was a little self-conscious, I had doubts and fears, but now it's done, and I can't pretend I didn't do it, and it's available across the globe. And so in a way, it makes you accountable to your accomplishment. And so I'm like, well, heck, I'm going to get this out there now because this is kind of fun, and there's no pressure to make it be something specific. You're just saying, hey, let me just share this experience. So.
I think that's a great point, that you enjoy the accomplishment of doing something like this, because most people wish they could write a book and say they're going to write a book and think about it, but actually to do it, I think it's a great idea to revel in that and enjoy that moment before the next one comes along. So I agree with you there. So if someone wanted to learn more about this book or get a copy or get a hold of you, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
They can call me. I have more information on my website if they first want to check that out. And can I say my website?
Yep.
It's www.brenda.girolamo.com. So that'll tell you a little bit more about me, the book, and it gives you a link where you can buy it, or people can call me direct.
Okay.
So.
And there's also your artwork on your website?
I do have a link right now. I have one online shop. It's through Zazzle.com where posters and prints can be purchased. I'm kind of currently working on large canvas, acrylic on canvas right now. I have a project I'm working on, so I'm transitioning into a little bit different.
All right.
But
we're going to take a quick break. We're going to look at some of Brenda's artwork, and then we'll be right back. And welcome back to Success in Art, talking about the artist journey and how to inspire and be inspired. So we're talking today with our guest, Brenda Girolamo. We've talked a little bit about publishing a book, which I think is a great accomplishment, but through this whole journey, Brenda has still been also doing her artwork. So we're going to talk a little bit about your artwork and that journey and the process of that. So what type of artwork have you done during this whole time?
Well, I've done some acrylic on canvas, but I also like to take photography. So I take pictures of whatever I like, and sometimes I just use the raw picture as is, or I will bring it into Photoshop and I will manipulate it, put filters on it, or collage it with other things. So sometimes the picture itself will speak for itself, and other times I might enhance it. I might even put some of my artwork with photography. So it's just whatever the imagination wants to create. So
yeah, we have some samples of your work here, and I see a lot of, I think, the designer and you have you kind of have the shadow with the flowers, but then you tend to put some messages on some of them. Joy blossoms here, and over here we have love grows here. I like that you're putting a message with the image so that people can do a poster, they can do a t-shirt, you know, any way they want. But I think it's interesting. I think that's the designer in you that's wanting to put the message.
I couldn't just have it be a picture. I had to title it or name it or group it. So yeah, I have some that are definitely, I have different series like these ones right here that have my signature block on the bottom. One thing I've really loved is the Japanese or the Chinese art where they have signed right in the middle of, or in the corner, and because it's not a familiar image to me, it's part of the drawing.
Yeah.
But for me, this is my initials, so it didn't quite work to put it in the middle of something, so I just put it on the end.
No, I think it's great, and it also brings into mind you also have Tai Chi training.
Exactly.
It kind of gives me a little bit of that yin yang thing going on. I love that. I love the signature. I as an artist always forget to sign my work, which is very bad. But I think it's great that you have an actual logo sort of signature.
I went into another phase of it where it's a little bit smaller, and so I just like to play with different, again, the designer in me just takes over. Sometimes I take an image and I just can't let it be just an image. I have to add my
So you know, on the side here we have some of your Photoshop work, but I understand that you started even more basic than that. You had the drive, the desire to be an artist, but you didn't really have that much formal training in fine art, and you didn't have a lot of money for materials or paintbrushes. So how did you actually start there, going way back?
Well, this was probably when we were living in California, when I wanted to return to a little bit more of the fine art. And this was in the late 90s, 98, 99. And I said, I just got to start painting. I got to do something. So I bought some little craft paints and some really inexpensive canvases. And just, I wanted to rebel, so I didn't even use paintbrushes. I just cut pieces of cardboard, because that was a whole nother series of art I used to do. I used to sculpt cardboard. So anyway, after I got out of that phase, I used some of these little cardboard pieces and I just dipped it in the paint, and I would just mark the canvas and paint with it and just come up with something authentic. So I wanted to not just start with a traditional brush. I wanted to break away from all the structure of the design and the commercial art, and just be messy.
Raw art, yeah.
Yeah. So.
And those were a lot of starbursts and sunbursts sort of things
lots
that
of
you
color.
showed me some. We'll show you some here that they were great. I love that they didn't use a paintbrush. It made me think, I want to start painting with my hands or something different, you know, to be unique and to really experience the artwork.
And be messy with it. Let it come from, you know, instead of sitting behind a computer screen and doing that, I wanted to just put my soul into it. Not that you don't with design, but
it's a very different tactile experience when actually working hands on your artwork. My favorite's pastels, because I love to have my hand on the canvas. So I have, you know, from here to here, all over my face, I'm covered with it. I can't even use a marker without being covered with it, but it's very tactile. You're doing it. It's also very meditative.
Yes. When
you're doing the artwork like that. It's a way to just kind of let go of everything else and be completely focused on one thing.
Yes. And it took me a while to be able to sit down and not pressure myself to have it already designed in my head before I sat down. So sometimes I oscillate between the two. Something's very abstract or something's very over-designed or designed. So I'm trying to find the balance between the two now, and just kind of have an idea or a theme of something, put a little bit of design into it, but the other day I was just painting and taking lots of different colors and marking it, and came up with a really neat painting that was just like nothing specific, but I thought, well, that was really cool. So,
well, I think when you're describing your poems and your poems and your writing, that you'd go back to it and didn't even know where it came from. I think sometimes that happens with paintings too. You'll do a painting that you don't really think much of it at the time, but you'll go back to it maybe a week or a month or years later and wonder where that came from. You know.
Yeah, I think that's one of the great things about art and giving yourself that time is to get out of the rational, logical mind and tap into just emotion or energy and just get it out and see that it too can be therapeutic or creative or serve a purpose, as there may be some people that have very left brain jobs and maybe they want an abstract on the wall, or maybe they do abstract things and they want something more designed. So there's a place for that too.
And it sounds like you, at the beginning, you just did it for you, just to create something, just to get that, tap into that source and get that out. It sounded like that was kind of your meditation, and you were doing it just to, you weren't trying to sell it, you weren't trying to put it out and be an artist in the world, but you were just trying to tap into the journey of an artist.
Yes. Just, yep, just for the moment, just to see what the moment was. And it's amazing when you do allow yourself to just sort of let go and not have to be perfect and not have to have an answer or a reason, or, and you know, you keep in mind you can always throw it away if you don't like it or you don't want anybody to see it, but chances are you come up with something that just keeps wanting to draw that creativity out of you. And,
and I think it's also when something like either you have to keep doing it in some form or another, or you put it in the back burner like I have, and it turns out, you know, I'll get back to that. Well, years pass and you're getting by, and it's hard to get back to it if you're not doing it. And you found a way to actually incorporate it into your lifestyle, and I think that's wonderful.
I'm still trying to put it in there consistently because things pop up and I'm having to manage so many things, but you're exactly right. Yep.
That's life as an artist, and I think what you do and what I do is I have 5 jobs. It sounds like you have 5 jobs as you juggle, but you have to find the balance. There's this family, you teach Tai Chi, you've written a big book of poetry, you're doing your artwork, you're doing massage work. I'm sure there's some other things in there I've forgotten. You know?
I do wellness coaching, so there's, you know, the health and wellness, and it all plays together because in a way they're all starting to affect each other.
Yeah.
They're starting to cross over and make like a tapestry of all the different, and it's all about finding that balance inside.
Yeah.
And making the most of the chaos.
Yeah, and I think a lot of creative types do end up doing a lot of those things because A, to make ends meet, to make a living, and to do what we are meant to do, and I think we do a little juggling act. You know, and there are a few very successful people that just are able to do just that, but not really, not that often, and then they have to have a team of people to market their work because when you're creating something, you still have to get it out to the world.
Right, you have to wear the different hats, and you have to be able to switch left brain, right brain, do enough creativity, and then, yeah, you're right, get it out there. So unless you hire somebody to do that, or like you said, you have somebody, if somebody's doing something very specific, say they're doing portraits or they're doing animals or they're doing, I tend to be like all over, so I'm trying to manage that all the time.
Well, that's the other thing, like what is an artist? And I know from a very young age we're taught to do just one thing or to do just one style, and I think creative types have a hard time grasping that. I mean, most of us don't want to do just one thing, and that we need to do a variety of things to get different senses, different interests. Like you, I teach Tai Chi, I meditate, I do artwork, I work with people here at the community station. I think most creatives need that variety.
I would agree. I would agree because there's so many different aspects of who we are, and each one needs to be fed. I always call it the inner crowd.
Oh,
so
yeah.
you've got to be able to kind of give everybody something. And I'd say the greatest challenge that I had was always feeling like I had to limit it to one and know where it was going and know where it fit and what is my role. And so now I've gotten to a point, I think probably age has something to do with it too. After a while, you grow out of that, or you just get to the point where you don't want to answer to it anymore, and you're like, I'm just going to take a chance and risk where this is going on its own anyway.
And I think that's good, but I think you have to deprogram yourself and be authentic, and then you get there. It's so funny how you go through all these paths and all this winding road, but they all kind of intertwine, and they all take you to where you're going to be, that higher self.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes. So it kind of can organize itself sometimes,
you
know. So.
All right. So you've been on a long journey. You've been all over, and you've done a bunch of things. So any idea where you're going now?
Just a little idea. I can't see far enough ahead. As I think there's a book out there by Stormy O'Martian that says just enough light for the step I'm on. So I have just enough light for the step I'm on right now, and it's currently just, you know, continuing education in massage. I'm learning craniosacral therapy, which is a very subtle therapy, so I have some, you know, about another year of training in that. The Tai Chi, I'm continuing with that.
Yep, it's always learning.
And so the wellness coaching, I'm just kind of planning, watering each one of those still. And so my biggest change right now is to just work on the large canvas format. And I'm still, I've started a little bit of it. I have some canvases hanging up downstairs on my wall. I don't have an easel. I don't have an easel. It's just all in my art room. The plastic is up, the canvases are hanging, and it's just a matter of going down there and just
Well, I think that's a very important message. Use what you have. You don't need expensive paints. You don't need expensive paintbrushes. You started with nothing, but you just have to do it. You have to use what you have, make it visible so that you can't just put it in the backyard, you know, in the closet and forget about it. Make it visible, make it accessible, and use what you have and just grow from there.
Just start it. Just start it. You know, without any expectation. Just do it for the curiosity and the you know, freedom of it, and just start, whether it's writing, whether it's painting, whether it's sewing, whatever it is. Just start with a little bit, and then, you know, normally it just kind of feeds it, and then it just takes on a path of its own. So.
Yes, I agree. Any other advice you'd like to give to aspiring artists out there, or anything that we forgot to mention about your journey?
I just think it takes a lot of courage and a lot of patience and a lot of self-motivation. So you just really have to draw from what you have inside, follow your passion, give it a chance, you know, and maybe you can't see further down the road, but if you just keep nurturing it, things reveal themselves along the way. So don't be afraid to take that unconventional path. Don't be afraid to talk to people, reach out, and explore it.
Yeah,
I would just say.
No, and I agree, and also realize not everything has to be a success. Some things you do for the sake of doing them, and doing them for yourself, not necessarily about selling them, but about going on the journey and growing from there. So it's been wonderful talking with you, Brenda. Thank you for coming on today.
Thanks for having me. It's been great.
So remember, inspire and be inspired. Continue on that path. Just do it. You know, is the lesson from today. Thank you very much. Have a great day. Debbie Roy from Derry Community Television, and this has been Success in Art.